I waited all night for him to come home on our anniversary, holding the cake I baked. But when he finally walked in, he smelled like perfume that wasn't mine. And that's when I knew our marriage was already over 3 months ago. I was Sarah Mitchell, married for 6 years, mother of 2 beautiful kids, living what everyone called the perfect. Tonight I'm just another woman who hid all away for someone who didn't even know my middle name. It started with that anniversary dinner. Or maybe it started years before that. I don't know anymore. David had been working late every night for months. The promotion, he said, the future, he said. Our future. But when putting kids to bed alone every night, when we're eating dinner by watching Netflix reruns, or future, starts feeling like a cruel joke. I spent 3 hours making his favorite chocolate cake from scratch. 3 hours I could have spent doing literally anything else, but I wanted to surprise him. I wanted to feel like his wife again instead of just the woman who paid the bills and scheduled the dentist appointments. The table was set with our wedding china, candles lit. I even wore the blue dress he bought me for my birthday 2 years ago, the one he said made my eyes look like sapphires. God, I was such a fool. 10 p.m. came and went. Then 11, then midnight. I called his office. Straight to voicemail. I called his cell. Straight to voicemail. I texted nothing. By 1 a.m. I was pacing the kitchen like a caged animal, still holding that cake, watching the candles down to nothing. The chocolate frosting had started to from sitting out too long. Kind of poetic, isn't it? When his key finally turned in the lock at 20:15 a.m., I was ready to cry from relief. Ready to forgive him. Ready to salvage our anniversary and pretend everything was fine. But the moment he walked through the door I smelled it, jasmine. Sweet, expensive jasmine perfume that definitely wasn't mine. He mumbled some excuse about client dinners and paperwork, but his shirt was wrinkled in all the wrong places and there was lipstick. Actual lipstick. On his collar that he hadn't even bothered to hide. Happy anniversary. I said, my voice hollow as I gestured to the ruins of our romantic evening. He looked at the melted candles, the cold dinner, the cracked cake, and for just a second, I saw something that might have been guilt flash across his face. But then he just shrugged. Sorry, know how work gets. That's when something inside me broke. Not snap, broke, like when drop a glass and it shatters into so many pieces, don't even try to put it back together. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there listening to him snore, smelling that perfume on his skin, and I made the worst decision of my. I decided I deserved better. I decided I deserved someone who would show. I decided I deserved to feel wanted again. The next morning, I downloaded 3 different dating apps while he showered. I told I was just looking. Just seeing what was out there. Just remembering what it felt like to be desired by someone who actually chose to be there. Marcus messaged me that afternoon. He was charming, funny, interested in everything I had to say. He asked about my dreams, my thoughts, what made me laugh. Things David hadn't asked me in years. Or too beautiful to look so sad in photos. His first message said. I stared at that message for 20 minutes, my heart pounding like I was 16 again. I should have deleted the app right then. I should have put down my phone and fought for my marriage. I should have confronted David about the perfume and demanded the truth. Instead I wrote back, what makes think I'm sad? And just like that I took the first step toward destroying everything I'd built. 3 weeks later, I was meeting Marcus for coffee. Just as friends, I told. Just someone to talk to, but I spent 2 hours getting ready. I bought a new outfit. I lied to David about where I was going. Marcus was even better in person. Tall, attentive, completely focused on me in a way David hadn't been in years. He listened when I talked about my kids. He laughed at my jokes. He looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. When he walked me to my car I knew he was going to me. I knew it and I didn't stop it. I didn't stop it and I didn't feel guilty. Not until I got home and saw David helping Emma with her homework at the kitchen table, looking at me with that trusting smile that used to make my heart skip. How was book club? He asked. Fine, I lied, tasting Marcus on my lips. Just fine. That night I lay awake again, but this time it wasn't anger keeping me. It was the terrifying realization that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross, and the even more terrifying realization that I wanted to cross it again. Looking back now, that should have been my wake call. That should have been the moment I came clean, got counseling, fought for what we had. But I was already falling and Marcus made falling feel like flying. The second coffee date became a lunch. Lunch became dinner. Dinner became long drives where we talked about everything and nothing. He made me feel alive again, electric, like the woman I used to be before I became just mom and wife. David noticed I was happier. He even commented on it. Seemed different lately, he said one morning, kissing my forehead before work. Good, different, like again. I smiled and poured his coffee, knowing I was becoming someone else entirely. Someone who lied with ease. Someone who created elaborate stories about where I'd been and who I'd been with. Someone who looked her husband in the eye and felt nothing but impatience for him to leave so she could text another man. The worst part, I was good at it. Scary good. I compartmentalized like a professional. David and the kids were one box. Marcus was another. And I convinced that as long as those boxes didn't touch, everything would be fine. I was living in 2 different worlds, and for a few golden weeks, it felt like I'd figured out how to have it all. I had my stable, my beautiful children, my secure future. And I had Marcus, who made me feel like a woman worth casing, worth choosing, worth showing for. I thought I was so smart, so careful, so in control. I had no idea that both worlds were about to collide in the most spectacular, devastating way possible. I had no idea that David had already hired a private investigator. I had no idea that Emma had been listening to my phone calls. I had no idea that my perfect double was about to become a very public single nightmare. But I'm getting ahead of. First, need to understand how completely I lost in those stolen moments with Marcus. How thoroughly I convinced that I deserved this, that David had driven me to this, that love was supposed to feel like this. Need to understand how easy it is to tell lies when the alternative is admitting I've become someone don't recognize. Because the woman who started texting Marcus that day, she was still trying to save her marriage. The woman who ended in his apartment 3 weeks later, she was someone else entirely. I'm still in this gas station parking lot. The fluorescent lights keep flickering, and every time they do, I see my reflection in the windshield. I look like a stranger. Let me tell about the moment I stopped being someone's wife and became someone's secret. It was a Thursday afternoon in October. David was at another client meeting. The kids were at soccer practice. I told I was just going to Marcus's apartment to talk, maybe have coffee, nothing more. I knew I was lying even as I thought it. Marcus lived in one of those trendy downtown lofts with exposed brick and floor to ceiling windows. The kind of place Dave and I used to dream about before kids and mortgages made us practical. Before we chose suburban safety over city excitement. When Marcus opened the door, he was wearing a gray sweater that brought out his eyes, and he looked at me like I was the best thing that had happened to him all year. I wasn't sure it'd come, he said softly. Neither was I, but I had come. I was there. And when he stepped aside to let me in, I crossed more than just his threshold. We talked for 2 hours about everything except why I was really there. He made me laugh until my sides. He asked me about my college dreams, my favorite books, what I wanted to do when the kids were older. Questions that made me remember I existed outside of being someone's mother and wife. David hadn't asked me questions like that in years. When Marcus reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, I didn't pull away. When he said I was beautiful, I believed him. When he really me this time, I am back with 6 years of loneliness and neglect. I won't give the details. This isn't that kind of story. But I will tell this for 2 hours that Thursday afternoon I felt like again. Like Sarah, not just David's wife or Emma and Jake's mom, just Sarah, deserving of attention and someone who couldn't wait to see her. Driving home afterward I expected to feel guilty. I expected to break down, to immediately confess everything to David and beg forgiveness. Instead I felt powerful. I felt alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. I felt like I'd been sleepwalking for years and had finally woken. When I walked into our house, David was on his laptop at the kitchen counter, still in his work clothes. How was afternoon? He asked without looking. Fine. Ran some errands. He nodded absently, already back to his screen. That night as he snored beside, I stared at the ceiling and made another terrible decision. I decided this wasn't a mistake. I decided it was exactly what I needed. I decided David's neglect had earned me this. I was so deep in my justifications that I couldn't see how completely I'd lost. The next few weeks blurred together in a haze of secret meetings and elaborate lies. I became a master storyteller, weaving fiction so detailed I almost believed it. Book club became my Thursday afternoon Aldi grocery shopping, covered quick coffee dates, mom's birthday shopping, gave me 3 hours for a long lunch that turned into something much more dangerous. I bought new lingerie I couldn't explain, so I hid it in my gym bag. I started working out religiously, not for David, but because Marcus loved how I looked in the black dress I'd bought for our dates. I was living a double so completely that I forgot they weren't supposed to merge. The first in my perfect deception came from Emma. My sweet observant 12-year-old Emma, who inherited David's attention to detail and my ability to read people. I was making dinner one evening, humming while I chopped vegetables when she appeared at my elbow. Mom, who's Marcus? My slipped from my finger, dripped onto the board. What? I tried to keep my voice steady while wrapping a paper towel around my finger. Say his name when we're on the phone sometimes, and smile different when text him. My daughter, my baby girl, had been watching me lie for weeks. He's just a friend from book club, sweetheart, nothing to worry about. She studied my face with those serious brown eyes that were so much like her father's. Dad doesn't make smile like that anymore. The innocent truth of it hit me like a, Emma, it's okay mom. I know sad sometimes. Dad's always working and get lonely. I get lonely too when guys talk to each other at dinner. She hugged me then, this wise little person who could see our family falling apart even when we thought we were hiding it. That night, I almost ended things with Marcus. I started typing the message a dozen times. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. I have to. David came home at 10 p.m. again, barely acknowledged the dinner I'd kept warm for him, and fell asleep on the couch watching SportsCenter. I deleted the message and texted Marcus instead. Missing. The second came from Jake. Jake, my 8-year-old sunshine boy, who thought I hung the moon and could fix anything within a band-aid. I was rushing to meet Marcus for lunch, running late because Jake couldn't find his favorite stuffed animal before school. I was stressed, distracted, checking my phone for Marcus's messages while Jake searched his room. Mom, can help me look? He asked, his little voice worried. In a minute, baby. Mommy has to go soon. But Mr. Bear is really important. Jake, I don't have time right now. I'll find him. I was already mentally calculating how to explain being late, how to apologize to Marcus, whether I could still make this work. Jake found Mr. Bear under his bed and came running to show me, but I was already grabbing my keys. That's great, honey. Mommy has to run errands. Be good for grandma. I his forehead quickly, but when I looked down his brown eyes were full of confusion. Don't hug me as long anymore, he said quietly. My heart shattered, but Marcus was waiting. Tonight, baby. I'll give the biggest hug tonight. But that night I was exhausted from lying, from compartmentalizing, from being two different people. Jake asked for his promised hug, and I gave him a distracted squeeze while mentally replaying every moment with Marcus. My son needed his mother, and his mother was busy being someone else's fantasy. The third was the one that broke everything wide open. It was a Tuesday in November. I was supposed to be at book club. But I was actually with Marcus at a little Italian place across town where I was sure I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. We were holding hands across the table, talking about maybe taking a weekend trip together, when my phone buzzed with a text from David. Emma's sick. Picked her from school. Where are? My went cold. I have to go. I told Marcus, already standing. What's wrong? My daughter's sick. My husband doesn't know where I am. The look on Marcus's face, confused like he just remembered I had a whole other, made me realize how deep I'd fallen into this alternate reality. I drove home at breakneck speed, practicing my story. Book club ended early. Phone was on silent, so sorry, rushing home now. But when I walked into my house, David wasn't in the living room or kitchen. I could hear voices upstairs, his calm, reassuring dad voice and Emma's fevered whispers. I climbed the stairs quietly and found them in Emma's room. She was curled in David's lap while he read her favorite book, the one I usually read to her. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled, and he was completely focused on making her feel better. This was my husband. This was my family. This was what I'd been risking for stolen afternoons with a man who had no idea what my daughter's fever medication dosage was. Emma looked when she saw me in the doorway. Mommy, where were? Before I could answer, she continued. Daddy said we're at book club. but Mrs. Peterson from book club called looking for because left sweater there last week. The room went completely silent. David's eyes met mine across Emma's bed, and I watched 6 years of trust in real time. I started, but what could I possibly say? David's voice was steady, controlled, but I could see the earthquake happening behind his eyes. Emma, why don't rest for a bit? Mommy and Daddy need to talk. My daughter, sick and feverish, looked between us with growing worry. Air fighting? No, sweetheart. David lied smoothly, kissing her forehead. Just grown stuff. Sleep now. He tucked her in, turned on her nightlight, and walked past me to our bedroom without a word. I followed him like a condemned woman walking to her. He closed the door behind us and turned to face me. How long? His voice was barely a whisper. I could have lied. I could have made some story about book club confusion, about running errands, about anything except the truth. But looking at his face, this man who'd loved me for 8 years, who'd held my hand during labor, who still brought me coffee in bed on weekends. I couldn't add one more lie to the pile. 2 months. He sat down heavily on the edge of our bed, the bed we'd shared for 6 years, the bed where we'd made plans and whispered dreams and held each other through nightmares. Who is he? David. Who is he? Sarah. Someone I met online. His name is Marcus. David's hands were shaking as he ran them through his hair. Online. Jesus. He looked at me, and I'd never seen him look so broken. Is it serious? The question hung in the air between us like a blade. Was it serious? Did I love Marcus? Or had I just loved the way he made me feel? Had I thrown away my marriage for a person or for an escape? Standing there in our bedroom, looking at family photos on the dresser, at Jake's artwork taped to the mirror, at the we'd built together, I realized I didn't even know. I don't know, I whispered. And that, more than anything else, seemed to destroy what was left of him. Don't know. He stood, walked to the window, stared out at our backyard where our kids played every day. Risked our family, our children's security, our entire, for something don't even know about. David, another impossible question. I thought I was. And now? I looked around our room, at the evidence of our shared, and felt the weight of what I'd done crashing down on me. No, I think I was in love with not being invisible. He turned from the window, and the look he gave me was worse than anger. It was pity. We're never invisible to me, Sarah. Just stop looking. That night, David slept in the guest room. I lay in our bed alone staring at the ceiling, and realized that somewhere along the way, I'd stopped fighting for us and started fighting against us. But it was too late for realizations, too late for regret, too late for anything except facing what came next, because David wasn't the kind of man who dealt with betrayal quietly. He was the kind of man who believed in consequences, and mine were about to begin on writing the final part of this story from a studio apartment that smells like bleach and broken dreams. It's been 4 months since that night, and I still wake every morning forgetting, for just a split second, that my old is gone. Let me tell what consequences actually look like when not the main character in a romance novel. The morning after David found out, I woke alone in our bed and heard voices downstairs. Familiar voices that made my run cold. David was in the kitchen with his brother Michael and his best friend Tom. They went silent when I appeared in the doorway, looking at me like I was a stranger who'd broken into their friend's house. We need to talk, David said, his voice flat and professional. The kids are down at our kitchen table. The same table where I'd waited with that anniversary cake, the same table where Emma did her homework while I texted Marcus, and faced 3 men who used to love me. David slid a manila folder across the table. Open it. My hand shook as I lifted the cover. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Me and Marcus at the coffee shop. Me and Marcus at the restaurant. Me and Marcus walking to his apartment building. Me kissing Marcus goodbye in the parking garage. Hired a private investigator. It wasn't a question. 3 weeks ago, when Emma told me he'd been acting strange and she'd heard talking to someone named Marcus on the phone. My daughter. My observant, worried daughter had been trying to protect her family while I was busy destroying it. The perfume that night, I whispered, pieces falling into place. On our anniversary, David's laugh was bitter. That was my investigator, Janet Collins. She'd been following all day, and we met afterward to go over what she'd found. Ironic, isn't it? Smelled another woman on me the same night I got proof we're with another man. I stared at the photos, seeing my betrayal documented in clear detail. In every single image I looked happy, radiant, alive in a way I hadn't looked at home in years. David, I can explain. No. His voice through my attempt like a blade. Can't explain, can't justify, can't minimize. Made a choice, Sarah. Every single day for 2 months chose him over us. Tom and Michael sat silent witnesses to my humiliation. I want a divorce. David continued. Full custody of the kids. I've already filed the papers. The room tilted. Can't take my children. I can and I will. Are an unfit mother, Sarah. Abandoned responsibilities for an affair. Lied to Emma and Jake every single day. Put selfish desires above their stability. I never. Left Jake crying in his room because we're too distracted texting boyfriend to help him find his stuffed animal. Emma told me, Mr. Parent-Teacher Conference because we're with Marcus. Forgot Jake's soccer game because we're planning next rendezvous. Each word was a nail in the coffin of the mother I thought I'd been. Those are isolated incidents. No, Sarah, patterns. That's who became when decided our family wasn't enough for. I looked at the photos again, trying to find some defense, some explanation that would make this less awful than it was. But there wasn't one. Because David was right. I had chosen Marcus over them again and again until choosing Marcus became as natural as breathing. I said weakly. Michael finally spoke. With what money? Haven't worked in 6 years. David's been supporting, paying for car, clothes, book club, coffee dates with boyfriend. The contempt in his voice was devastating. I'll get a job. Doing what? Tom joined in. Have no recent experience, no references, no credibility, and now have documented proof adultery and child neglect. I never neglected my children. David stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Emma asked me last night if mommy loves us anymore because never seem happy when with us. Jake told me he wishes would smile at him the way smile at phone. That's not neglect, Sarah. Making our children question whether their mother loves them. I broke down then, completely, sobbing at my kitchen table while 3 men watched me realize what I'd lost. When I finally stopped crying, David's voice was gentler but no less final. Can see them on weekends. Supervised visits until get together. Have until Friday to pack things and find somewhere else to live. David, please. I loved for 8 years Sarah. I would have done anything for given anything needed. All had to do was talk to I. He picked the folder of photos. Instead, chose to betray everything we built together. Chose to break our children's hearts. Chose to destroy the only family I'll ever have with me. The next few days were a blur of boxes and tears and logistics. I called Marcus thinking maybe it'd be my refuge, my soft place to land. His phone went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Vi drove to his apartment. His neighbor said he'd moved out the day before. No forwarding address. Suddenly I understood. Marcus had been looking for an adventure, a distraction, a married woman who wouldn't want too much from him. The moment my marriage exploded and I became available, I also became a problem he didn't want to solve. The man I'd destroyed my family for disappeared like he'd never existed. But the damage I'd caused was permanent. Moving day was the hardest day of my. Emma and Jake watched from the front window as I loaded boxes into my car, their little faces pressed against the glass like I was dying instead of just leaving. Emma ran outside as I was putting the last box in my trunk. Mom, are coming back. I knelt down to her level, trying to memorize her face. I'll see you on weekends, baby, and I'll call every day, but won't live here anymore. No, sweetheart. Mommy made some bad choices and now things have to be different. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I still love Mommy. Even if Daddy's mad at that broke me all over again. Jake wouldn't even come outside. He watched from the window, tears streaming down his face, holding that stuffed bear I'd been too busy to help him find. David stood in the doorway, not helping but not gloating either, just watching the natural consequences of my choices play out in real time. The kids don't understand why their family is broken, he said quietly. Someday, when they're older, I'll have to explain that their mother chose a stranger over them. I hope it was worth it, Sarah. It wasn't worth it. It was never worth it. Not the excitement, not the attention, not the feeling of being desired. None of it was worth watching my children learn that people love can just decide to stop choosing. The first few weeks in my studio apartment were the loneliest of my. I applied for jobs with a 6-year gap in my resume, no explanation I could give without revealing my shame. I lived on cereal and instant coffee because groceries for one felt too depressing to buy. I tried dating again, thinking maybe I could find someone who would want to build something real with me. But every man I met eventually asked the same questions: why did get divorced? Do have kids? How often do see them? And when I told the truth, that I cheated on my husband and lost custody of my children, they all had the same reaction: polite distance, quick exits, numbers that went straight to voicemail. Turns out nobody wants to date a woman who destroyed her own family. Nobody trusts someone who broke the most important promises she ever made. My weekend visits with Emma and Jake became exercises in heartbreak. They were polite, careful, like I was a relative they barely knew. Emma asked fewer questions. Jake stopped running to hug me. They were learning to live without me, and they were getting good at it. David remarried last month. Her name is Lisa, and she's everything I used to be before I became bitter and selfish and destructive. She's kind to my children. She shows to their games and recitals and parent-teacher conferences. Emma calls her mom Lisa now and it doesn't even hurt to do it. Jake drew a picture of his family for school. It was David, Lisa, Emma and himself. I wasn't in it. When I asked him why, he looked confused. Don't live with us, mommy. Visit sometimes. That's what I am now. A visitor in my children's lives, a weekend obligation. A reminder of the time before their family got better. I found Marcus on social media last week. He's engaged to someone now. A single woman with no baggage, no complications, no children asking where mommy went. She looks young and carefree and nothing like the broken woman he left behind. He never loved me. He loved the idea of me. The fantasy of a married woman who would meet him in secret places and make him feel important. The moment I became real, became available, became someone who needed him instead of just wanted him, I stopped being interesting. I was just a midlife crisis he got to walk away from. But I can't walk away from what I did. I can't undo the damage I caused to 2 innocent children who deserved better. I can't take back the lies, the betrayal, the selfish choices that seemed so justified at the time. I can't rebuild a family I tore down with my own hands. So I'm writing this as a warning to anyone who thinks they can have it all, who thinks they deserve more, who thinks the grass is greener anywhere except where they planted it. The excitement fade stops. The person betrayed everything for will find someone else to be excited about. But children will remember forever that chose a stranger over them. Family will remember forever that weren't satisfied with their love. And will remember forever that had everything ever wanted and it away for nothing at all. I thought I was the main character in a love story, but I was actually the villain in my children's lives. And there's no redemption arc when the damage is this complete. Some mistakes don't deserve forgiveness, they deserve to be warnings for everyone else.